Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing very well. Today, we are going to mix it up a little bit. I have a video for you guys that I have put a lot of hard work into. It's a little different than what I normally post, and I really hope everyone will enjoy it. I'm not going to beg for likes or subscribers. I just want to get this out of the way. I hope you guys enjoy, and if you do, please let me know. And if you don't enjoy, let me know as well. Hope you guys enjoy the video. I am a massive Star Wars fan. I absolutely love Star Wars with all of my heart. It truly was my childhood. Star Wars is an amazing blend of creative, unique, fascinating, emotionally investing, and merchandisable, making it to be what I would say is probably the most impactful movie franchise of all time. From lightsabers to battle droids to stormtroopers to Sith Lords to fuzzy teddy bear things, Star Wars will always have a long-lasting impact on every single generation to come. And with all of that said, however, there is one section of Star Wars that is constantly debated and disagreed upon, and that is the Star Wars prequels. Now, the Star Wars prequels came out in 1999, 2002, and 2005, respectively. These three movies are, of course, the story of what happened before the events of Episode 4, A New Hope, and, of course, the following movies. And you can ask any hardcore or mild Star Wars fan, and I am sure they will all have their own opinions and takes on the prequels. So I was inspired to make this video because I recently went back and watched all 6 of the Star Wars movies from Episode 1 to Episode 6, and I realized a lot of things about the prequels that I had just never realized before. Now, of course, nothing I can say in this video is going to be something that hasn't already been said before. Now, it should be stated that I am a massive Star Wars fan, and I do like the prequels myself. However, they are absolutely not without their faults, and I can say that without thinking twice. And I want to provide perspective and, like I said, a logical approach and a logical look at a lot of things about the prequels and truly break them down and uncover some truths that I feel like are not talked about enough when people discuss the prequels. So today we're going to dive into the prequels and cover all the bases. Today we are going to uncover the truth about the Star Wars prequels. I would like to start out with this first point. The biggest difference between the prequels and the original trilogy is this: the stories are complete opposites of each other. The original trilogy is an overarching story about how the good guys won, and the prequels are an overarching story about how the bad guys won. And so right off the bat, we can see which story is going to be more popular. The original trilogy will always be the gold standard, and rightfully so, because it is the feel-good, happy-go-lucky story of how the good guys overcame evil to live happily ever after. It is the ultimate feel-good story. And the prequels are about how the bad guys lied and manipulated their way to eventually destroying the good guys and starting an evil, domineering reign over everybody. And that story will never be as good, or as popular, I should say, as the original trilogy. So right off the bat, you can see how the prequels will not be as loved as the original trilogy. No matter how much quality and how much awesomeness the prequels could possibly produce, it will never be as popular as the original trilogy. Now, I'm sure most everybody has already made up their mind about the prequels, which is totally okay. It's very similar to the Michael Jordan and LeBron James debate for basketball. Most people have already made up their mind of which person is the GOAT of basketball, and at this point, most people aren't going to have their opinion changed. And that is totally okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I just want to provide a deeper truth to the prequels to better understand them. So let's start off with one of the biggest critiques of the prequels and discuss it. One of the biggest critiques of the prequels is that it's just simply boring. And uninteresting. So let's look at an example here. So I'm going to play two scenes, one from the original trilogy and one from the prequels, and I want you to tell me which scene you think is more exciting.
Move the fleet away from the Death Star.
Honorable representatives of the Republic, I come to you under the gravest of circumstances. The Naboo system has been invaded by the droid armies of the Trade.
I object! There is no proof! This is incredible!
We recommend a commission be sent to Naboo to ascertain the truth.
The Congress of Malastare concurs with the honorable delegate from the Trade Federation. A commission must be appointed.
The point?
Excuse me, Chancellor.
Into the bureaucrats, the true rulers of the Republic, and on the payroll of the Trade Federation, I might add. This is where Chancellor Valorum's strength will disappear.
The point is conceded. Will you defer your motion to allow a commission to explore the validity of your accusations?
Now, of course, you are all going to say the scene from the original trilogy. Now, I know this could seem like I cherry-picked this scene, but the point I'm trying to make is that it is very true that the original trilogy is more engaging and exciting than the prequels because there is less of the political discussions and all of that and more of action, explosions, blasters in the original trilogy. The original trilogy is more engaging and exciting from the first movie to the last movie than the prequels. That is not to say that the prequels do not have action or exciting events. That is just to say, from the very first movie to the last movie, the original trilogy is overall more engaging and exciting. In the prequels, there is a lot of political scenes and a lot of political talk. And that will, like I said, never be as popular or as interesting as blasters and Yeti monsters and explosions. The belief that the OT is much less boring than the prequels is a legitimate belief. However, there is something very important to consider when arguing that the prequels are more boring because of these political scenes. Now, from the get-go in the OT, we see a world that is not living in peace, but a world that is in turmoil, controlled by evil people. The whole OT is a story of how the good guys get small victories all throughout the movies, and over time grow stronger and stronger until eventually they win the final battle, defeat the evil, and live happily ever after. There's no politics involved in this because there was no politics in the world. It was just the resistance fighting to overthrow the bad guys. Nothing political about that, just straight up fighting in action. The world of the OT was not a world that was steeped in politics. It was a world steeped in resistance and fighting. When we pick up at the start of The Phantom Menace, the very first thing that we see is a text screen full of political talk. Now, you learn that this is more of a manipulation tactic than it really is to be a political talk, but that is looking back in hindsight. So if you're watching the movie at the time, the first thing that you see is a screen full of political talk. And a lot of people can find this boring, which I totally understand and totally respect, but what this shows you is that the Star Wars universe, the Star Wars world of that time, when The Phantom Menace started, was a world that was peaceful, it had freedom, and it was a world that didn't worry about wars or fighting, but it was a world that was steeped in politics. Remember, the Jedi had been reigning very peacefully for years, up until The Phantom Menace, of course. And the Clone Wars didn't start until really the end of Attack of the Clones, but mainly, the third movie, Revenge of the Sith. So the world of the Star Wars universe at that time was a world that was steeped in politics. The prequels couldn't just jump straight into a world of fighting. That wouldn't make sense. It would be the same exact start for both movies, and it just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to just jump straight into the unrest right off the get-go, right off the bat. It had to slowly build its way up to the world of fighting. And as the prequels go on, the politics get less and less, because that's when the Clone Wars started. So the more war, the more galactic turmoil, the less politics. There is a lot of politics in Episode 1. There is a lot, and I don't blame anybody for saying that Episode 1 is boring because of this. I mean, if we think about it, Episode 1 doesn't have a whole lot of true action scenes like Return of the Jedi or Empire Strikes Back does. Instead, a lot of the scenes that are action scenes in the episodes 4, 5, and 6 are instead replaced with political scenes in episodes 1 and 2. And that is just because that was the world of the prequels. That is how the Star Wars world was before galactic turmoil. As the prequels go on, politics get less and less. There are some politics in Episode 2. There's still a good bit, but there's not as much in Episode 1. And then there's almost no politics in Episode 3. There's a little bit, but there's not really that much politics in Episode 3. Because as we go on, we see the world more wrapped up in war. We see the world moving towards the start of A New Hope. I believe the prequels had to build up to the Star Wars universe that everybody knows and everybody loves, and it was necessary to show how the world was before the blowing up of all the Death Stars. Is the politics more boring? Absolutely, but I believe it was necessary to show a world steeped in politics, and more importantly, how the bad guy, Chancellor Palpatine, was able to manipulate the politics to gain power. Now, this, of course, will never be as interesting as what was going on in the OT. Straight up action and awesome explosions and all that. But I believe Lucasfilms did the correct thing in showing this, despite the damage it would do to the prequel's popularity. I do not blame anybody that thinks that Episode 1 and 2 are boring for their politics, because I completely understand. However, it is important to note where Lucasfilms had to start and what they had to do to work their way up to the point that we all know and love, that being the OT. Now, the next biggest critic of the prequels in everybody's mind is probably a lot of the stuff to do with Anakin and Padme.
Oh, brother!
Now, this is something that has been talked about and criticized from the dawn of time, since these movies came out. And so, again, nothing I can say here is something that hasn't already been said. Many people criticize the dialogue and the acting between Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman in the prequels, and deservingly so.
The thought of not being with you, I can't breathe. I'm haunted by the kiss that you should never have given me. My heart is beating, hoping that that kiss will not become a scar. You're so beautiful.
It's only because I'm so in love.
No, no, it's because I'm so in love with you.
Now, even though the Jedi are highly trained and intellectual beings, I and most people believe that this kind of dialogue is pretty ridiculous. It's very Shakespeare-esque, and it's just not realistic even for beings who are highly trained and intellectual. And I believe that this problem falls upon George Lucas. As the director, you are responsible for getting the most out of the two characters, out of the two actors. And if the dialogue doesn't hit, it is also your job to make the necessary changes. And a lot of these scenes, mainly from Episode 2, because that is where we get the most Anakin and Padme dialogue, it is just hard to watch at times. The acting is either lackluster or the dialogue is too cringy or Shakespeare-like. However, it is also important to note that this section of critics is mainly cornered to one movie, Episode 2. Now, there are, of course, moments of pretty bad dialogue in Episodes 1 and 3, but it's important to think about that in Episode 1, Anakin is just a dreamy little kid and Padme is 14. So there isn't really any meaningful love there, just some sweet dialogue that sounds as though it was being directed at a kid, which it was. In Episode 3, we don't get that many love scenes between Padme and Anakin, but when we do, you can see that Portman and Christensen's acting and emotion is better than in Episode 2, especially on the Mustafar scene. Now, the dialogue may not be all that much better, but you can at least see that they are putting a lot more emotion and they're a lot more experienced and comfortable in their roles. Episode 2 is filled with a lot of cringy romance scenes and some lackluster acting at places, absolutely. But the question you have to ask yourself is, would you let that one down point overshadow all the other good points that the prequels present? And whether you say yes or no, your opinion is totally legitimate. That is the question that it comes down to a lot of the time, however. You could say, well, Anakin was probably 18 or 19, and Padme was around 24 in the story at the time of Attack of the Clones. So maybe you could just chalk up their faults to them being young and not knowing how to love. Padme did, of course, have one love interest that she makes reference to, but other than that, they really had no experience loving. And if that is your thinking, that is totally valid. If you still blame George Lucas for giving them questionable dialogue and not getting the most out of them, that is totally valid as well. It is important to be mindful of these facts and not to be overly critical of facts as well. Now, we haven't specifically targeted any movie yet, but we've kind of just gone over some broad points. And I believe this is kind of the best way to break down the prequels if you're doing an overarching prequel review, because this is the way that George Lucas intended the prequels to be viewed, as one overarching story. The points about the prequels being less interesting and engaging, and the bad romance between Padme and Anakin, are two of the biggest critiques of the Star Wars prequels, which we have both talked about and discussed now. Now, with any point we talk about, you are always entitled to your opinion, and I am not trying to change anyone's opinions about the prequels for either direction, of them being bad movies or good movies. I'm just trying to provide a logical and perspective-based look on the prequels. Now, another point I would like to discuss is about the Jedi themselves. Now, arguably the most interesting part of the prequels is that there are so many interesting Jedi, and that the prequels do a great job of showcasing how many different Jedi there were. From Qui-Gon to Obi-Wan to Anakin while he was a good guy, to Yoda to Mace Windu, even to Coleman Trebor. All these Jedi are very fascinating and sometimes hilarious to see. The showcasing of how many Jedi there were is an area that the prequels top the OT in. The diversity and the sheer size of the Jedi Order is something that, of course, the prequels have as an upper hand over the original trilogy, just simply because, it was a time before all the Jedi died. And the prequels did a great job, in my opinion, of showcasing how many Jedi there were. It is so interesting to see the world full of Jedi compared to the world with only 3 Jedi. Now, I'm not saying that one world is better than the other. I'm not saying that the prequels world of all the Jedi and the Jedi Temple is better than the original trilogy's world of only Obi-Wan, Luke, and Yoda. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying it is an interesting thing to really look at. Ewan McGregor does a fantastic job of playing a Jedi that deals with a lot of heartbreak and tragedy, but remains on the path to good. Hayden Christensen does a great job of playing a Jedi that has good in him, but overall succumbs to evil. At least he does a good job of that in Revenge of the Sith, depending on who you ask. A lot of people criticize Hayden Christensen's acting in the interpersonal scenes in Episode 2, which is valid, is very valid. But a lot of the action scenes, a lot of the Jedi scenes, especially in Revenge of the Sith, Hayden Christensen puts forth a very good performance, and you can tell that he at least really, really cares about the role.